And welcome back inside the home office, and welcome to this week's season finale of NEC Women's Basketball on the Run. I'm Craig D'Amico. Today we are bringing you one final show to wrap up season 38 of NEC Women's Basketball and get us ready for the 2024 NEC Women's Basketball Tournament. Today we'll take a look at all the playoff scenarios. We'll recap the penultimate weekend of regular season action, which featured not one but two TV games. We'll crown the top stars of the week, break down the NEC tournament by the numbers, preview the regular season finale, and we'll chat with Julia Fabozzi from the Wagner College Seahawks. All that and more coming up on the show. But first, let's get started with our three-point shot. Now, usually we end the three-point shot headlines with the standings, but today we'll start with it and we'll break things down. We'll look at the playoff picture, the tiebreakers with 4 NEC women's basketball regular season games left to be played. Sacred Heart remains in the top spot after winning a pair of games this past weekend against Stonehill, 78-49, and at Merrimack, 64-41. And we'll have more on that Merrimack game coming up in just a little bit. So Sacred Heart now 20-9, 14-1 in conference play. They've won 11 in a row, and they have recorded their 8th 20-win season in Division I, their first since 2016. And with the pair of wins, they have clinched at least a share of their 6th regular season championship. 2006, 2007, 2009, 2012, 2016, and now again here in 2024. They have all but wrapped up the number 1 seed because Lemoyne, the Dolphins, they finished their regular season because they're off coming up on Thursday. They've already played all 16 conference games, and the Dolphins finished that 16-game conference slate by winning a pair of games this past week against Wagner, 55-46, and St. Francis, 56-24. And they did it with some dominant defensive performances. The game against Wagner, they outscored the Seahawks 15-0. They shut them out in the third quarter of the game, holding Wagner to 0 for 16 from the floor on Thursday night. And then, no way they could do that again. That was just a once-in-a-lifetime thing. They did it again pretty much on Saturday against St. Francis. They held the Red Flash to just 9 points in the first half. And in the second quarter, just 2 points, both on free throws. So once again, they held the team without a field goal for an entire quarter. Incredible. What a way for the Dolphins to finish their regular season 14-2 in conference play. Not bad for a team that was picked 8th in the preseason. They're currently a half game behind Sacred Heart. The 14 wins ties 1990 Mount St. Mary's for the most by a first-year program in the NEC tournament era since following the 1987 season. So great job for the Dolphins, but now they're done. They'll have to sit and wait to see their fate, whether they'll claim a share of the regular season title, whether or not they'll get a number 1 seed. That's still to be determined. Sacred Heart, we've mentioned, all but wrapped up the number 1 seed, because if they win Thursday against St. Francis, they win the regular season outright and they win the number 1 seed outright. But if they lose, both Sacred Heart and Lemoyne would each be 14-2. Lemoyne, in that case, would get a share of the regular season title, and then it would be a true tie because Sacred Heart and Lemoyne would have each beaten each other once, and they each would have lost to St. Francis. So they will have exhausted all of the tiebreakers. So in that case, in that situation, the number 1 seed would then have to be decided by the net rankings following play on Thursday night. So, by the way, as of right now, Sacred Heart has a clear advantage over Lemoyne in the net ranking. So most likely, win or lose, Sacred Heart will be the number 1 seed. Lemoyne will be the number 2. A more pressing matter for Lemoyne, though, is going to be the 9 days off before their quarterfinal matchup the following Monday. We talked with Mary Grimes, and she mentioned how the last couple years they've been bitten in the playoffs by some extended layoffs. We'll talk about that more in just a little bit. So most likely Sacred Heart 1 and Lemoyne number 2, regardless of what happens in that Sacred Heart game on Thursday. Now, FDU, regardless of what happens in their game on Thursday, they will be the number 3 seed. They're locked in at 10-5. They rebounded from a pair of losses to the top 2 teams last week. to sweep this past weekend, winning at Merrimack 71-63. It was a game of runs in which they had the last run and were able to win it in the fourth. And then they beat Wagner 59-51, a gritty Wagner team that just wouldn't go away. The Knights were able to hold on. Now, the Knights are currently on the road for their final 3 games, but they've already won the first 2 of them last weekend, and they've won 6 out of 8 since the start of February. Now, the 4 and 5 seeds, those are still up for grabs. Merrimack's magic number was at 1 all weekend, but they couldn't win and Central wouldn't lose. So the magic number is still 1. Merrimack will go into the regular season finale on Thursday with a magic number of 1 to clinch a top 4 seed for a second straight year. But if they lose and Central wins on Thursday, then the Blue Devils will sneak into the top 4, a place they haven't been since they were the regular season champs, co-regular season champs in 2015. Now, Merrimack and Central, that will be a quarterfinal matchup. Those 2 teams are locked in. They know they will be playing each other when the NEC tournament tips off on Monday, March the 11th. The site, though, is still to be determined, and the site could be a big factor in the outcome of that quarterfinal game because they split the 2 meetings this year, each team winning at home. So who will get the home court? That will be decided on Thursday. Now, despite dropping their last 4 games, St. Francis clinched a spot in the NEC tournament this week, and Stonehill, they clinched their first ever playoff spot this week, despite getting swept by the NEC's Connecticut institutions. Now, Stonehill can clinch the number 6 seed and a first-round matchup with Fairleigh Dickinson with a win on Thursday against LIU. They swept St. Francis this year, so they have the head-to-head tiebreaker advantage. St. Francis can get up to the number 6 seed with a win over Sacred Heart and a Stonehill loss to LIU. And finally, the final playoff spot still hangs in the balance. It will all come down to either 4-11 LIU or 3-12 Wagner. Obviously, LIU is 1 game up, so they have the edge. They can make the field of 8 with a win over Stonehill or a Wagner loss to Merrimack. LIU, they can still get all the way up to 6th if they win and St. Francis loses to Sacred Heart, or as we mentioned, they can miss the field completely. So LIU can get up to 6th, or they could be out completely. Wagner's only chance to make this tournament is to beat Merrimack and have Stonehill beat LIU. Wagner can only end up as the 8th seed if they get in, and that would mean a first-round date with Sacred Heart. Now, headline number 2 and 3 is a pair of TV games we had this past week, starting with Lemoyne at Wagner on Thursday night. It was the Leap Day matchup. We went through some Leap Day stats last week. No one matched or surpassed the 37 points from Jasmine Nawaje from 2016, which was the single-day Leap Day scoring record. However, this Leap Day wasn't really about offense. This Leap Day in Staten Island was about defense. Lemoyne, they've won 7 in a row to conclude their inaugural regular season at 14-2, as we mentioned, but they had an impressive 55-46 win over Wagner. Latoya Baker had her 12th double-double of the season with 16 points, 10 rebounds, and in the third quarter, Lemoyne pitched a shutout, outscoring Wagner 15-0. They were down 3 coming out of the half. Wagner hit a 3 right at the end of the first half to go into the locker room with the advantage. But then coming out of the locker room, a 15-0 run in the third. They finished the third quarter up 12. Wagner shot 0 for 16 in the period. And then, as we mentioned, 2 days later, Lemoyne held St. Francis without a field goal in the second quarter, just a pair of free throws. Mary Grimes all season long has talked about the grit of her defense, the defense being the heart of the team. Defense wins championships. Well, we saw it on this night. She talked about the team's goal to finish in the top third. And not only did they accomplish that, they still have a chance to earn a regular season title. And on top of it, they just beat St. Francis, the only team that they hadn't beat all season. So a great way for them to finish the season. Although now they're kind of rooting for St. Francis to pull off an upset against Sacred Heart on Thursday, even though, as we mentioned, Sacred Heart probably would still hold on to the net rankings advantage, but that remains to be seen. We talked earlier about Mary Grimes, and she told us candidly that following this game, against St. Francis, win or lose, it's going to be 9 days until our first NEC tournament game. And that was a concern that she said was weighing on her mind even before this past weekend was complete. She told us the last 2 years, her team has been bitten by some extended layoffs going into a playoff game leading to early exits. So she said she was kind of toying with some things they might do differently. We'll see how they prep, how they stay fresh so they could be ready to go for the start of the NEC tournament next Monday. And then finally, headline number 3, the game from Saturday afternoon in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Sacred Heart and Merrimack. When these two teams met in January, we had the call on ESPN Plus, myself, Pam Roker. Merrimack was coming off 2 weeks off. They were just getting some of their key players back from injury. Both coaches told us, look, Sacred Heart was ready to go in this game. They jumped out to an 18-4 run. Merrimack didn't score until 2 minutes left in the first quarter. They had a feeling that when these two teams get together in March again, it's going to be a completely different story. And that's exactly what it was. It was like two completely different teams than what we saw tip off the conference season back at the beginning of January. In this game, it was the complete opposite. In this game, it was Merrimack coming out red hot. They jumped out to an 8-0 run in the first 3 minutes of the game. And the second quarter saw several key Pioneers pick up a second foul. Nicira Pryor, Olivia Tucker, and Elise Dudley. So all those players had to go to the bench. But here is where the depth of Sacred Heart really picked up. We talked last week how the advantage about this year's Sacred Heart team over the 2009 Sacred Heart team that went undefeated and it's the depth in the roster. So without Pryor, Tucker, Dudley on the court in that second quarter, instead of Merrimack opening up a big lead, Sacred Heart was able to hang right in there. And Kelsey Wood was the one who stepped up, scoring the final 7 points of the second quarter for the Pioneers, leading to just a 2-point deficit for Sacred Heart at the break, 32-30. And so being only down 2, and now second half, you're getting all those players with 2 fouls back on the court. Off to the races the Pioneers went. 8 seconds into the third quarter, OT back in the game. She hits a 3. Just like that, Sacred Heart's in front. And the Pioneers really didn't look back from there. Pryor, she made up for all the lost time that she was on the bench in foul trouble. She had 6 points at halftime. She had 8 points alone in the third quarter. Sacred Heart would win the third 21-8, and they would go on to win and spoil the Merrimack Senior Day 64-51 to clinch a share of the regular season for the first time since 2016. It was their 11th straight win, their longest win streak since their last regular season title in 2016. Nicira Pryor, double-double, 23 points, 10 rebounds. And again, Kelsey Wood really was the star of this game. 14 points, 6 rebounds. Coach Minetti talking about how Kelsey's kind of picked it up over the last couple of weeks on the offensive end of her game. And really, it was that offensive end that helped Sacred Heart tread water in the second quarter until they got all their firepower back. So here's where we were. And Coach Minetti told us this in the lead up to the game. She said, I always promised the team, if we sweep a conference weekend, if we win 2 in a row, team gets ice cream. So again, Sacred Heart swept the weekend, another happy bus ride back home filled with pints of ice cream. But she also mentioned that last year she promised her team if they had won 10 in a row, that she would take them all out to hibachi. So after last week, Sacred Heart won 10 in a row, her players came up to her and said, hey, coach, remember that whole 10-game win streak hibachi thing you talked about last year? Is that deal still good? And so Coach Minetti's ponying up on that bet. And coming up this week, supposedly at some point following the regular season finale, it's going to be hibachi for the Sacred Heart Pioneers. Flaming volcanoes, shrimp in hats, beating hearts out of rice. All that is in the future. Maybe a second straight NEC Tournament championship is in their future as well, because now Sacred Heart's in a position where they probably won't have to go on the road again until the NCAA tournament. So there you go. That is our top 3 headlines of the week in this week's 3-Point Shot. Time now for the Heat Check, featuring the top stars from this past week in NEC action. We start at number 3, and we have a tie. Tunisia Brown of FDU and Samora Watson for Central Connecticut State. For Brown, it was her long-awaited return to Merrimack, where she spent 2 seasons and was a preseason all-conference player last year, but did not take the court. This year, coming back to her old stomping grounds with the Knights, she had 14 points and a career high 19 rebounds in her return to North Andover while recording her 8th double-double. She followed up with 17 points and 9 rebounds in a key Knights win over Wagner. And then for Samora Watson, she averaged 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 2.5 assists in a pair of Blue Devil wins, 20 points against LIU, 16 against Stonehill. Watson still second in the league in scoring, averaging just over 17 points per game. Now, our top 2 on this week's top stars, well, they remain exactly the same. LaToya Baker from Lemoyne, the Dolphins senior, recorded her 12th double-double with 16 points, 10 rebounds against Wagner, her league-leading 5th double-double in the month of February. She did it on the final day of February on Leap Day. Baker also led Lemoyne with 16 points in their regular season finale against St. Francis. And our number 1 star, Nicera Pryor from Sacred Heart, the reigning player of the year, back on top for the 3rd time in 4 weeks. The sophomore guard from Baltimore had 21 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists against Stonehill, 23 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists despite first half foul trouble against Merrimack. During this 11-game Pioneer win streak, Pryor is averaging 20.9 points per game, 8.1 rebounds per game, and 4.8 assists. Here's a scary thought. She's getting even better here in the most important time of the year. As we said last week, she's looking to be the 5th player in NEC history to win Player of the Year back-to-back, joining Jess Kovach, Artemis Spanu, Susie Rolick, and Vanessa Blair. Jess Noble won Player of the Year twice, just not in back-to-back seasons. So there you have it for this week's Heat Check. Brown, Watson, Baker, Pryor, our top stars of the week, the penultimate week in the Northeast Conference. Now it's time for our NEC Open Mic, and this week we welcome in a guest who's had an incredible comeback story just to get back on the court for her team here in 2024, and she'll be battling on Thursday for the final playoff spot in the Northeast Conference. From the Wagner College Seahawks, we welcome in this week's guest, Julia Fabozzi. It's time now for our final NEC Open Mic of the regular season. We welcome in from the Wagner College Seahawks Staten Island zone, Julia Fabozzi. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
Now, for those that don't know, your season almost came to an end before it even got started. A knee injury over the summer. You recently came back just a couple of weeks ago, back on February the 15th, and right in time for Senior Day, a start this past Saturday against FDU. So take us back over the summer. What were some of your emotions and thoughts when you first hurt your knee?
Honestly, it was devastating. It was an awful injury, going into your senior year. Finally had a year under my belt here in the NEC. I was super excited to come back and, really make a print on my hometown and show people the type of game that I play. And unfortunately, I tore my ACL, second day of summer workouts. Freak accident, and it happens. It was devastating. I didn't know when I would ever play again, even if it was this season, if that was even an option. But hey, I battled back. It's an unforgettable story, something I'll never forget. And anyone who hears my story won't forget, because to come back from an ACL injury in 6 months really is unheard of.
Yeah, so and that's kind of what I'm wondering. So, like, when you were first talking with the doctors, post surgery, and they were saying, "Oh, we think it might be this long or this long or this long." How long was it before you started doing the math in your head? Like, wait a minute, 6 months, I can maybe get like. When did you start figuring all that out?
Actually, the day I tore my ACL is the day I saw the doctor, and he said 6 months. And I went home and I did the math, and I literally said 6 months. Almost 7 would bring me to Senior Day. And that was the goal. And I just pushed for Senior Day. Fortunately, I worked really hard that the doctor cleared me like 3 weeks earlier than that for me to come back even sooner, which wasn't even in the equation when it happened. But yeah, pretty immediately I made that decision. Like, okay, I got 6 months. That's what he said, 6 to 9. So that's what I'm aiming for.
What was the emotion like? 'Cause you said that was the goal. I'm sure that's what was driving you through all the rehab and all the hard work that it took to get back. So what was the emotions like when you finally went out there, family, everybody there for Senior Day on Saturday? So take us into that moment. What was it like?
Honestly, it was a dream come true. You know, you only get one senior night. Yes, of course, if you come back for a grad year, you do get your senior night, but you play since you're a little kid for that senior night, for your official college senior night. Like, you know, it's the big one, it's the important one. So the fact that I was able to come back, walk on that court and play and even start on my own senior night is something that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. You know, to fight back and be here and play on your senior night was it was emotional, it was amazing, it was scary, and it was everything you could imagine in one, but hey, I did it. So
No,
oh,
that's
really exciting.
yeah, that is awesome. It was great to see, and I'm sure leading up to that, having to sit on the bench and kind of being a observer for most of the season, I'm sure you kind of maybe learned a lot from taking a little bit of a step back. So, what were some of the things that maybe you saw that maybe you wouldn't have seen if you were playing all year?
You know, you honestly just learn so much from the game. When you're playing, there are certain instances, certain situations that when you're in the moment, you're not thinking bigger picture, or you're not thinking what's the next step, or what's the player's next move, per se. But now when you go on the other side of things and really take the time to almost take on a coaching position and analyze the game and look at it as really like a game, like you're playing the game. You're not in the game, but you're playing it and like trying to move those pieces and help my teammates to be in the best position. Especially with how high my basketball IQ is, I'm able to help them in a different way, which even helped my relationship with them when I was on the court too. So coming back, them trusting like all year, she had my back, now let's have hers. So
That's awesome. So it was like a seamless kind of transition.
yeah.
We want to talk about your basketball journey for a second, because like we said, from Staten Island, your journey kind of took you to some other places and then brought you back to Wagner. So, where was it? How was it that you kind of fell in love with basketball when you were a kid, and how did your journey kind of lead you to Wagner?
So funny, like pretty ironically, I have six siblings. They all played basketball. Nobody Division 1. I was the first one. But ironically, I don't remember not having basketball. Like I don't
Wow.
remember falling in love with it. I don't remember not falling in love with it. I just remember it always being the constant in my life. Since I'm 3 years old, I've been on a team. So to me, it's just a part of who I am. It's a part of my identity. Because I don't remember a time when basketball wasn't such like a prominent part in my life. So I guess just loving it all, like you love it differently. Sometimes
Sure.
more on some days, less on others, but I feel like it has been part of every step of my life and created the woman that I've become today because of everything I've been through. So loving it, I've loved it from the day I stepped on the court till now, even with the injuries. I still love it, and I give so much gratitude to the game for giving me everything that I have and all the tools that I have today.
It's
So
in the blood. Basketball's in the blood.
absolutely.
Now, obviously, it's a great story. We don't want it to end. You and LIU right now battling for the last spot, two teams for one spot. Wagner's only way in is to win this week and have Stonehill beat LIU. But I'm sure you're focused on what you can control, and that's your game coming up this week with Merrimack. So, what is it key for you in this final game to win it and give yourself a chance to make the tournament?
So our key as the team for this game is to play hard and play our game. Our biggest challenge this year was inconsistency, and not just game to game, but even quarter to quarter. You know, I'm sure if you've seen us play in some quarters, some moments, we are a phenomenal team. I would even consider us one of the best teams in the conference when we're all consistent and playing on the same accord. We're a tough team to battle. But that inconsistency. So this Thursday, we have to really focus on playing hard and playing together and staying together through the entire game, because our team has great potential. We have great talent. There's no lying there. We all know that. It's just now putting those pieces together, especially with a brand new team.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge, and it always will be a challenge, you know? So creating that foundation of, hey, we're gonna play hard, we're gonna play for 40 minutes, and we're gonna stay together. And if we play like that, I really think that we'll have a great chance in winning and getting ourselves into this tournament. So,
Well, we look forward to seeing it all play out. Now we're gonna get here with the final five questions. These are quick hitters, so just
yeah.
first thing that comes to mind, let it out. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite snack and junk food.
Oh my goodness. I love chips. Chips and
Okay.
dip.
Any kind of
Favorite.
chips and dip. Good. Favorite color.
Purple.
Okay.
Got
Uh,
purple pants on.
There you go. And purple because you're rooting for Stonehill this week. So that's
Oh,
that's the
yeah.
other thing.
Yeah.
Pre-game superstition.
Uh, honestly, it has to be like my undergarments, like whatever sports bra spandex. Like
Okay. All right.
I like to
Uh,
keep the like if I play good in them, I keep them for next game. I wash them, but
ooh. Okay.
I keep them.
All right. All right. What has been the best game or moment from your college career so far?
Wow, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because there was so many great moments in my college career, even starting at Providence. You know, you play against UConn. That's a dream since you're a little kid. And then my other dream was to play at home and win a championship. And listen, the opportunity that I had when I first stepped on the court in Staten Island was like to die for. But I gotta say, the top most amazing moment was coming back from ACL in 6 months and walking on that court. And that's a feeling I'll never forget. You know the wins, the losses. I remember I score a lot. That's what I'm good at. There's a lot of those, but I gotta say, like, to battle something that I've never experienced, the hardest challenge in my entire life, and walking back on that court and just playing, like that has to be the greatest experience and moment in my career up until now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And last question: if we took a survey of your teammates, what is a trait or an adjective that you think they would use to describe you?
You really want to know? No,
I don't know. Do it.
definitely, I would definitely think my teammates look at me as a leader on our team.
I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Definitely as someone they can definitely thrive in, and I'll always be there for them. And listen, as a teammate, that's all I want to give to them. I want them to know that I'm here for them. And listen, stuff happens, but you know that, like, if anything, push comes to shove, I'll be there for them.
All
So
right. Well, the final playoff spot will be decided on Thursday. Wagner is at Merrimack at 3. And then if Wagner wins that, pay attention to LIU and Stonehill at 6 to see
yeah,
who goes to the NEC tournament. Both games are on NEC front row. Julia, best of luck to you and the team coming up on Thursday.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Be sure to check out this full episode of NEC Women's Basketball on the Run on the NEC Overtime Pod, available now wherever you get your podcasts. The 2024 NEC Women's Basketball Tournament is right around the corner. And on this week's Stat Chat, we want to look ahead to who may have the advantage. So let's take a look at the NEC Women's Basketball Tournament by the numbers. 21 out of the previous 36 completed tournaments, the Nets were cut down by the number 1 seed. That's 58% of the time the number 1 seed wins it all. Only 8 times has the number 2 seed won, although Sacred Heart was the number 2 seed winning it all last year. And only 3 times has the number 3 seed won. Also of note, home teams have won 11 out of the last 15 NEC Women's Basketball Championship games, although Sacred Heart won on the road at FDU last year. So historically, higher seeds, home court, major factor in determining the NEC Women's Basketball champion. Now, last year, we saw the top 4 seeds all advance in their quarterfinal games, all advancing, and that is a rare occurrence. The last time the first round of the tournament went all chalk was 2016. So usually there's a first round surprise or two. So we'll see, does it end up chalk again? Or is there another first round surprise, which historically is what happens? Now, St. Francis, you may know, they've won the most NEC titles with 12. The rest of the active NEC teams have only won a combined 8 NEC titles. St. Francis just clinched a playoff spot this past weekend. They're now going to be appearing in their 29th NEC tournament and 15th in the last 16 years. But the longest active NEC tournament appearance streak, that goes to the FDU Knights. The Knights this year will be appearing in their 10th straight NEC tournament. Now, this year we have 2 teams, Lemoyne and Stonehill, who will be making their first ever NEC tournament appearance. And that makes this year's tournament the first since 1999 that has 2 schools making their NEC tournament debuts in the same tournament. Back in 1999, it was UMBC and Quinnipiac each appearing for the very first time. Now, we should mention Lemoyne and Stonehill, they can win the NEC tournament. They just can't go to the NCAA tournament because they're still going through the 4-year reclassification process into Division I. So in the event one of those two teams wins the championship, the other finalist would be the one that gets the NEC's automatic NCAA tournament bid. Now, in the event, the crazy event that those two teams play each other, Lemoyne and Stonehill in the championship game, that would unlock a hidden game. It's almost like a video game. If you unlock certain things, then you get like a bonus. That's exactly what this situation is here. If we unlock Lemoyne versus Stonehill in the championship game, a bonus NEC tournament game will all of a sudden magically appear out of nowhere. The two semifinalists will then go head to head to decide who gets the NEC tournament bid into the NCAA. So there will be two games. There will be the NEC championship game, and there will be the NCAA bid game. So if you love the NEC tournament so much, you want to see a bonus game unlocked, well, this year you can root for Lemoyne and Stonehill because we could unlock a hidden game in this year's NEC tournament if those two teams end up matching up in the finals. Now, one final note, only 12 times in the 36 prior completed tournaments, the team that has the player of the year has gone on to win the tournament. The last, of course, Nicira Pryor with Sacred Heart last year, and then Kendall Brzee from Mount St. Mary's 2 years before that, and Jess Kovac with St. Francis 3 years before that. So in recent history, players of the year have fared quite well in the NEC tournament, cutting down the nets. But historically, it's only happened just a handful of times. 12 out of 36 has a team with the player of the year ended up winning the NEC tournament. Now, just want to point out, the path that Sacred Heart took to last year's tournament, winning as the number 2 seed, winning on the road at the number 1 seed's home court, winning with a player of the year on the roster, winning a tournament that didn't have a first round upset. Their entire path to the title last year went completely against the numbers. It went completely against history. So it should be interesting to see this year, because this year it's looking like Sacred Heart's going to have all the history on their side. They're going to be the number 1 seed. They're going to have the home court advantage. They'll probably still have the player of the year. So a lot of history will be on their side this time. We'll see how their road to the NEC championship goes here this March. So there you have it. A little NEC tournament by the numbers for you as the 2024 NEC women's basketball tournament is drawing closer, with quarterfinal action set to commence on Monday night, March the 11th. On now to the final segment of the season. 68 NEC regular season women's basketball games down. 4 more to go. Thursday night is the final NEC women's basketball game day of the regular season. The final pieces of the playoff puzzle will come into place throughout the entire day. It starts bright and early and it goes all the way until the end of the night. So let's take a look at what's coming up on tap. The action starts bright and early, 11 a.m. The regular season title and the number 1 seed will be decided as the Sacred Heart Pioneers host the St. Francis Red Flash. A Sacred Heart win, they'll win their 12th in a row. They'll go in as the number 1 seed. With a St. Francis win, though, Lemoyne would win a share of the regular season title, and the number 1 seed would then be decided by the net rankings at the close of business on Thursday night. Now, Sacred Heart did defeat St. Francis by nearly 40 points, 86-47 earlier in the season. And Sacred Heart is beating teams overall by about 19 points per game. And only one of Sacred Heart's wins this year in conference play has been by single digits. So you figure advantage Sacred Heart as they try to claim the regular season title outright. Then at 3 p.m., the final spot in the top 4 and the final spot in the NEC tournament could be decided as the Merrimack Warriors host the Wagner Seahawks. We talked with Julia Fabozzi about this matchup earlier on. She told you some of the keys. Merrimack's magic number for a top 4 seed is still just 1, but for Wagner, they must win or they will be eliminated. Merrimack beat Wagner 72-45 back in mid-January. Again, Wagner must win. If they do, they could just hop in the bus on their way back from Merrimack. Stonehill is on the way from Merrimack, so they could just take the bus, get off, hop in the stands, put on their purple, and they could even root on Stonehill in person if they wanted to, because at 6 p.m., it'll be LIU and Stonehill. If St. Francis loses to Sacred Heart Thursday morning, then LIU not only could clinch a playoff spot in this game with the win, but they would clinch the number 6 seed. but Stonehill, they can clinch the number 6 seed for themselves and a matchup with FDU with a win over the Sharks. Now, these two teams met in the NEC opener. It was a great game, 54-52, an LIU win. Lauren Sampson, Ashley Alston each had 18 points for their respective teams. So we're looking forward to another battle again against Wagner's fate. If they beat Merrimack, Wagner's fate will be decided in this game. LIU, Stonehill, potential winner gets a number 6 seed if Sacred Heart beats St. Francis earlier on. So a lot could be at stake at 6 p.m. on Thursday. And then finally, 7 p.m., the final game of the 2024 NEC women's basketball regular season. It's FDU and Central Connecticut. Now, FDU is locked in at number 3, win or lose, but an 11-win season after all the vets departed last year. What a tremendous start that would be for the Stephanie Gately era, and certainly would give them some momentum going into the tournament. But Central Connecticut could be in a position. If Merrimack loses to Wagner earlier in the afternoon, then Central would be playing for a top 4 seed for the first time since 2015 and the right to host the Warriors in their quarterfinal matchup. Now, if Merrimack wins earlier in the day, then FDU would be set at the number 3 spot. Central would be set at the number 5 spot. So this game would be a great contest for fun, the joy of competition, and not much else, because both teams would kind of be locked into their respective spots. We should point out, though, that these two teams did play one of the candidates for Game of the Year earlier this year, an 80-75 FDU win in overtime. Central had a huge comeback in the final 2 minutes or so to send the game into a bonus session, but they just couldn't finish it off. Samora Watson had 35 points. Lily Park had 33 for FDU. We'll see what these two teams do for an encore in the Thursday night spotlight. They'll be the final game to turn off the lights on the 2024 NEC women's basketball regular season, and either everything could be on the line, nothing could be on the line. We'll wait and see. Fans, be sure to follow us at NEC Sports and at northeastconference.org for full postseason coverage and the announcement of the award winners and the all-conference teams. And be sure to join us at the NEC Women's Basketball Championship game on St. Patrick's Day, Sunday, March the 17th, for complete coverage. By the way, not my predictions, just 20 years of a sense of how the coaches vote for these things. I'm going with Pryor as the player of the year, Carruthers as the rookie of the year, Coach Minetti as the coach of the year. Personally, I'd go with Coach Grimes of Lemoyne, maybe even Wade Vini of Central Connecticut. Those were 2 teams were picked as the last 2 teams in the standings in the preseason, and here they are potentially both in the top 4, but usually the coaches go for the coach of the number 1 team. So Coach Minetti's probably going to be the choice. Defensive player of the year, the coaches will probably stick with Nicira Pryor. Most improved, it could go with Thornton or Elohim from LIU. I'd go with Thornton just because Stonehill has a better record than LIU at the moment. So those are kind of how I see the awards shaping out based on how the coaches have voted in the past. But we'll see what happens this time around. Again, pay attention to at NEC Sports and northeastconference.org coming up, leading up to Monday for the announcement of the award winners and the preview of the quarterfinal playoff matchups. Fans, we thank you for joining us all season long. And until next time, I'm Craig D'Amico, and this has been NEC Women's Basketball on the Run.